the simple pleasures.
Nick went down. Unbelievable.
Yes, that's actually.
And is now OOP, as they say in dog racing, out of picture. In terms of the college football championship, there would be almost no way that these committee people, even if they bring back Condoleezza Rice and she accepts a bribe from Jose Sulaiman, there would seem to be no way that you could somehow work Alabama back in the equation. Is there, with 2 losses? And possibility that they would have 4 losses on the season. Well, you can't say that because they won those games. And your man Jimbo, what's he on? Like a 9-game losing streak? That's unbelievable. Jimbo Fisher.
I don't know how much they've lost in a row. They have not played well the entire year. And Jimbo, like they're talking, his buyout's like $50 million, and they're considering it. Like that's how bad it is.
Imagine that, $50 million they're going to give this cat to fail.
Go.
Wow. Did we all make some bad career choices? We should have just been failing college football coaches.
The time.
Wake up with Defo, joined by Lubie. Welcome to the Defo Show.
Good morning. And I won't sing. I was about to say good morning. We will not sing to ruin your morning. This is the Defo Show. No Defo, just Lubie here on South Florida Live. Wish everyone who has found us, who continues to find us. And I apologize for those who have to see me speak alone, which means a lot more of me, which, as we know, not everyone is a fan of. And I've heard that for a long time, not just the 12 plus years I've been with Defo. I've heard that my entire life. When you have this voice, it didn't just suddenly appear, this voice. I've had this voice my entire life. You get made fun of a lot and people mock your speaking. So good luck to you and to me for the next couple hours. Going to be with you till about 9 o'clock. Here, Defo is in Atlantic City. I did get the famous one-word text from Defo. Anyone who watched yesterday, we talked about the Monday Night Football game, the Commanders versus the Eagles. Eagles 8-0, the Commanders 4-5. Commanders struggling to find their footing. The Eagles, the best team in football, not only by record, just by ability. I mean, the Eagles have been dominant pretty much on both sides of the ball. In some of their last few games have been a little bit closer than they'd like, but they haven't really struggled at all. And Jalen Hurts has thrust himself into the MVP conversation. That defense, which has been issues in the past, has played really strong. So it was, I think, a double-digit spread. Excuse me. That's always fun. So I think it was a double-digit spread up to like 14. And we talked about it yesterday, Defo, because he's going to be in Atlantic City. How do you not take action? How do you not get involved a little bit? There you go. Thanks, Tony, man. So I don't think that's true, but I appreciate it. So you got to at least take a bet, right? You're going to be in Atlantic City. There's sports books. You got to at least have some action. So we talked about if you're going to go, why not take Washington and the points? Well, I also wondered, was that where he'd stop? So I got the text last night. If you watched, yes, the champagne was popped. The Miami Dolphins remain the only team to go through an entire NFL season, including Super Bowl victory, undefeated. The Eagles did lose. And it was a weird game because the Commanders have been sort of a joke all year long. They've had their issues. Look, they're 4-5, so it's not like they're winless, but they went and got Wentz, and he didn't work at quarterback, and Heineke has been sort of, and they've had other quarterback play. So they've struggled, and the Eagles look like garbage. I mean, the Eagles, finally in the second half, started to move the ball, and in consecutive possessions had stupid-ass fumbles that on possessions they probably would have scored. And the Commanders won. The Commanders won 32-21. So I get a text from Defo, money line, meaning he definitely took the Commanders, like we had talked about, and went for the gold. He went for the win. So I'm thinking he got 3 or 4 to probably 4-1. I mean, if it was like 14, I think it went off at 11. So he probably got 3 or 4-1, which is pretty impressive. So for Defo, I applaud you. That's a great start to your, it's not a week. He got there Monday, he comes back Thursday. You're 3-4 days in Atlantic City. So that got off to a great start. We are here. We will have not just me today. I will make sure to change the voice up because who wants only this? Dave Hyde will join us at 7:35. The Miami Dolphins, the Miami Heat are in play. The Heat back-to-back, or is it three? I guess 3 wins in a row. They took out the Hornets in back-to-back games, and then they just had a thriller last night versus the Phoenix Suns. So they're inching closer. I think they're now back to 500, which from where they were at 4-7, losing to the likes of the Kings, you'll take that. Jimmy Butler with a big block to end that game on Devin Booker. I think 2 blocks on Devin Booker to steal the 113-112 victory over the still really good Phoenix Suns. The Hurricanes got a win. Their fans are acting like it was a big win. From what I've seen at Georgia Tech, no win against Georgia Tech's a big win, but I guess when you're in total disarray and the Canes, you'll take anything you can get. So we will talk about that, the Noles, all that South Florida sports, those of South Florida that you're fans of. We will discuss that with Dave Hyde. And then at 8:20, ANtwan Staley, a guy you've definitely, if you followed us, we had him on for years, covered the Dolphins for a long time. Did cover the Canes a little bit. Then went up to Tallahassee, covered the Noles. Then was in Carolina, covering the Carolina Panthers. Then out west, covering Oregon Ducks. And now he's in the Big Apple, covering the New York Jets in the NFL. So we'll talk NFL and college football with ANtwan Staley at 8:20. So we'll get to it last night. It's funny. I grew up, the 72 Dolphins were the thing. And we've talked a lot about that here. Look, if you go to our podcast now, it's perfect timing. Larry Zonk himself was our guest yesterday on the Believe Network, BLEAV.com, search after hours. We talked to Zonk, and it was a really cool conversation. It wasn't a normal 8-minute. We had about 15 to 20 minutes with Zonk. He has a new book out, his memoir, Head On. And it was a lighter, fun Zonk, and he told a lot of stories, and he talked about Shula, and he talked about, those days and now. And even I talk about this a lot. I grew up well after 72, but I grew up when 72 hung over you. Like, you had Marino, so it wasn't like we sat there living 72, but my parents were in their teenage years in the 72. They were going off. They were children. So when you start to form your memories, that's what 72 happened. So 72 was a big deal. 72 team was a big deal in my home. It was huge. I mean, between there you go. It was Shula and Greasy. Like, literally, my mom didn't like Marino, even though he was on the team she liked, because he wasn't Greasy, which I didn't understand, because Greasy didn't do anything. Greasy literally had 8 passes in a Super Bowl. I'm not hating on Greasy. He's a Hall of Famer, and he was great. He was the metronome to that team, but Marino was, like, scintillating, and my mom had a weird thing with Marino. But the 72 team was a big deal in my house, so it had this aura. And over the years, it's sort of, I don't know if it's fallen away, but it has gotten a little sort of not the idea of, well, someone lost, haha, they popped the champagne. And it has sort of gotten, I guess, obnoxious. I will say a little weird. They always go to the skybox where Mercury Morris and Nibizanka and Greasy, Nat Moore, I don't think was even on the team, but he's a Dolphin. So, like, they'll go to the Dolphin skybox and they'll have former 72 people, current Dolphin people, celebrating the 72, yay. And it's 50 years, and I get it. And Dave Hyde wrote a book about the undefeated Dolphins, so we'll talk with him about that as well. And he has Swagger out or coming out. It was on pre-order and was a hit already on pre-order, written with and about Jimmy Johnson's life. Talk with him about that. But the 72 is a big deal. So the Eagles going down is cool. Look, I'm not going to lie. It hasn't seemed to get the Dolphins anywhere. They haven't been to an AFC championship game since the early 90s. They haven't been to a Super Bowl since the early 80s. They haven't won a Super Bowl since the early 70s. So the 72 thing is sort of worn out its welcome. But, Eagles go down. It was a really exciting game. It was a really fun game. And I haven't stayed up and watched many of the Monday nights and the Thursday nights because the game has sort of been Last night's game was worth watching. Now, we did not mention this yesterday because I guess it happened late night and we were here in the morning. But I didn't want to mention it now. Our thoughts, hearts, prayers, not the thoughts and prayers, but our hearts go out to those in Virginia. There was a shooting involving 4 Virginia football players. One was the alleged shooter. 3 are now since passed that were the victims. I don't know the backstory, don't know the ongoing things. I don't think it was a mass shooting. I think it was literally just those were the people involved. But we didn't talk about this at all yesterday, whether it was here or the lunchbox, so I'd be remiss to not even mention it. It really had just happened. I think Mayo sort of brought it up, and we sort of, gave our thoughts, but we didn't really talk much about it. And it had just happened, so we didn't talk about it yesterday morning. So I did want to say another tragedy with a gun. Oh, we did talk about it with Mayo because we said nothing ever happened. So we touched on it with Mayo. We didn't talk about it here. So those of you who just watch our show and don't watch the Lunchbox, I wanted to at least give my thoughts and condolences. And I mean, it keeps happening. And whether it was mass shooting or not, we don't handle mental illness well in this country. That's the funny thing is, like, one side brings up mental illness and the other side's like, well, no, it is mental illness. I think both sides can agree. No one who's totally in the right mind to start shooting people. That's not something someone who's in all their faculties do. But to then do nothing about mental illness, then it's a bullshit excuse. Okay, if you're going to bring a mental illness, do something. If you're not going to do anything, then it's the fucking guns. It's got to be something. You can't say, well, mental illness, but we're going to do nothing. It's definitely not the guns. No, that's not how life works. There's a reason for things, and there's a cause and effect, and I know it's taking your guns, but it seems to be pretty easy to get guns for those who aren't stable. So sensible background checks make sense. Sensible gun control makes sense. We all know that. The NRA has freaked people out who have guns to the point where they don't want anything that they actually down in their heart of hearts don't mind. I know plenty of people who own guns, and they all are like, yeah, it would be okay to not have the lunatic own a gun. That'd be great. So I'd rather focus on mentally ill not being treated as criminals, but being treated as mentally ill, because that's sort of what our country does, is everyone's a criminal, which is not true. Some people are violent, evil people who should be treated like criminals, and some are people that have just mental issues, and our government sucks at helping you if you don't have money. If you can't afford insurance, you can't go get help. So even if you want help, even if you know you're messed up and you don't want to do the things that your brain's telling you to do, you can't get help because you can't afford it. So that's the thing. To me, other countries, not all, but other countries handle the prison system so different. It's for rehabilitation, not making better criminals, which ours does. Most people go to prison. The recidivism rate is insane. Like, you go, you're going to go back because they don't help you. You can't get a job after. If you go in a halfway house, it's a fucking joke. It's not somewhere that's going to help you get a job. No one's giving you clothes. No one's giving you food. No, you got to do it. You got to do it to survive. And what do you know? Crime. So prison system's already a whole nother thing, but I'm not even focusing on that. The mental illness is a joke. Like, and I don't give a shit if you for free healthcare or whatever. We should all be for innocent people not dying. Like, that seems like a simple thing to me. Maybe it's not simple. I'm sure there's a lot more into it, but should there be? Should there be more to the idea of innocent people dying or not dying? Because to me, there shouldn't be. If there's something we can do to help the mentally ill, why not? It seems to make sense to me. Like, that's my fun thing when people don't worry about other people. Eventually comes back to you. Like, there's a bunch of crazy people running around. You might not have gotten shot this time, or someone this time, but at some point, then the people who don't want to help go, oh my God, what is going on? Where the fuck have you been since Columbine happened in the late 90s, early 2000s? And it's only escalated since then. And no other country has issues. And I said this yesterday on Mayo. No other country has this. You can be the greatest country in the world, but if you have something that's really bad and no one else has it, what does that say? So it's sad. It's right. And I'm not getting on the pulpit. This is the wrong. First of all, this is the right time. When someone dies of a gun, that's when you would talk about limiting guns. What the fuck better time is there? Like, well, it's the wrong time. You're just taking advantage. I am. It's fucking tragedy. And it's ridiculous. And it's pathetic. And it's sad. Obviously, I'm going to talk about it now. When you want me to talk about it when you look good because the guns haven't murdered the people? Come on, man. They're not doing it with machetes. They don't even do it with bombs. They're doing it with the same gun. Okay? So please. Now, this might not have been an assault rifle if he's just one dude going after three. It seemed like they're on the same football team. So this doesn't seem like the same act. It just feels like this happens over and over and over again. And we do nothing. Like, what part of life do we just watch crazy shit happen and go, But this part, because there's money behind it, it's a joke. So I want to at least touch on it. I know you don't come here for that. I get it. You want us to shut up and dribble. We've never done that. I find that also funny. Like, maybe if you're new to us, okay, but the people that are like, what are you talking about? It's like, where the fuck have you been? Like, Defo and I were on terrestrial radio on a company that, if you follow them, probably leans a little right. And we talked about whatever the hell we wanted. Yeah, a couple of times there was weirdos calling in, so we were told to, sort of watch it maybe a little, so we didn't hammer certain things, but we always talked about whatever the hell we wanted to talk about. Like, it's a sports talk show, but we're all adults and we all live lives. Like exactly. That's a good point. Whoever Jack Daniels is, like, we're not going to talk about the cheating. I just cheated on you, but now's not the time because you're hurt. No, this is literally the time you would talk about it in marriage counseling. So, anyways, which I've gone through marriage counseling. I think it's great. That's the thing is, I am someone who's fully embraced therapy, and if you do it the right way, it can reform you and help you grow. Our country does not. The stigma may not be there. I'm not even. It's the financials behind it. It really is hard. Look, I've not had insurance. I've had to get my own insurance. I've had ACA, and they don't make it easy sometimes. And sometimes you have really good. Like, my wife has really good insurance, and getting therapy is like this weird outlier. We can go anywhere, we can do anything, and we don't have to pay shit. I want to go to a therapist. Oh, it's like $150 an hour. It's like, what? Isn't mental health like just as important? Sometimes even more. Like, that's weird. Like, even for people who have money and insurance, going and getting help is not easy. So just think about people who don't have money and don't have insurance. Like, the way we do things in this country is so weird. And I get it. You didn't turn on this show for any of this. Well, sorry. Defo will be back Friday. And Defo and I talk about this stuff all the time. Like, we're all humans who live in this freaking world. And to just keep going and ignore what's around you is childish. And we might be pieces of work. We might be idiots. We're actually not as big children as we let on. So I just want to give my heartfelt condolences to those who lost loved ones. When will it stop? I don't know. The funny thing is, we're all neutered here to the point where I'm not looking for it to be stopped. Even I'm not that naive. I'd like to be slowed down. I'd like it to be curbed. I'd like it at least the numbers go backwards. Like, instead of having 100 shootings a month or whatever the hell, get down to 50. Like, wouldn't that be a nice target? But that's where we are in this day and age. Everything's a fight. Everything's a yelling. Everything's a screaming. And the actual issues go under. While we scream about the bullshit up here, the real shit is underneath here, percolating, and the people behind the scenes are doing whatever the hell they want. So there's my diatribe. This is the Defo Show with Lubie. No Defo, just Lubie. Coming up in about 15 minutes, we will talk with the one and only Dave Hyde. Swagger. I think if it's not out now, it's going to be out. Dave and Jimmy Johnson will be at the Miami Book Fair this weekend. We'll talk about that book, about Jimmy Johnson's life. Dave also wrote a book on the undefeated Dolphins. It is 50 years, and it is a great day if you are the undefeated Dolphins, because you remain the undefeated Dolphins, as the Eagles went down last night, 32-21 to a lowly Commanders team. I'm watching that game going, what the hell team is this? And I guess you just leave Heineke. Like, Heineke is not special. Okay, Heineke is not like the star quarterback. Heineke is not even, okay, Tua's not good now, but what can Tua be? Which we're now seeing what he could be. Heineke is not that. But they play well with him. He's now over 500. Like, they have some guys, they're like 19-37 without him in the last whatever the hell games. Now 10-9 with him. I mean, Carson Wentz was horrendous. Fitzpatrick was horrendous. You almost got Alex Smith half dead. I mean, he had to come back from one of the craziest injuries ever just to try and play, and now he's retired. Like, Heineke gets the job done, and he's fun. I'll say, watching them when he's in is fun. I remember that playoff game versus the Bucs when they almost beat the Bucs. Taylor Heineke is fun, and that's one thing we're seeing with the Dolphins. He keeps plays alive. He actually does make smart plays that play near the end when the snap went over his head and he just took it. The play at the end, that was a penalty that I know the Commanders aren't happy about, but Heineke was running around, trying to use clock, realize if they can get a first down, they can end the game. But if he throws in an instant completion, then the Eagles get to hold on to their last timeout with 1:38 left. So what does he do? Takes a knee. He's like, you know what? Screw it. We're around the 40. We'll make them use their last timeout with about 1.5 minutes left. We'll punt. Their defense had woken up. The defense actually played well in the first half and then had gotten sort of sloppy in the third quarter, but was finishing strong. 1.5 minutes. We're up 5. We'll punt. Cool. Takes a knee. Clearly takes a knee. You can see him take a knee, which is actually very smart. Instead of running around, losing more yards, possibly fumbling, possibly having a completion or an interception. It's like, all right, that's it. The Eagles were playing very sloppy all night. 2 dudes were clearly could see he took a knee. Wreck him. Stupid. They get the penalty. Commanders keep the ball. Commanders kneel out, and Commanders now 5-5, and the Eagles now are 8-1. So it was a very exciting game. My favorite part, the German beer name. There you go. Heineken. The big topic yesterday, which I thought was fun, and if you notice, if you've watched us, you followed us, I've had a certain opinion about Tua that most of South Florida has not shared, and the national media definitely didn't have. Not Mr. Alabama. I didn't, rah-rah Tua when he was there, but it was a guy that the Dolphins were supposedly targeting as a number 1 pick. He didn't have the hip injury, so he fell back, and the Dolphins under Brian Flores won 5 games, so they fell back, met at 5, were still able to take Tua, but he was coming off the hip injury. They had no talent. Their offensive line was among the worst in the league. Running game, receivers, you name it, horrendous. Plus, they had a coach that we found out had no idea about offense and actually hated it. He didn't like offense, and he did not like Tua, Brian Flores. And now you're seeing what Tua could be, which I said for the last 3 years, and I said it all off season, and that's fine. The tooting your own horn thing is not something we do, and it's not something I do. Like, if you're on Twitter, you'll find people with receipts. They look for something you said 3 years ago, and haha, I got you. Okay, I mean, I don't even need to look that hard. People were talking so much shit to me about Tua. It would be easy to find the receipts, but that's dumb. I'm not that's stupid. Like, you give an opinion. If you're right, cool. You're wrong way more than you're right. So the one time you're right to go and see. Nah. But I will say, what are you, who are the Herbert Tua fans, saying now? Because I hated that it was this fight between, like, well, you're either Herbert or Tua or Herbert. I think both are talented quarterbacks. I think those 3 teams, the Bengals who got Burrow, the Dolphins who got Tua, and the Chargers who got Herbert, got their future quarterbacks. Like, I know it's rare we see that. I know in the most recent draft where Josh Allen has turned out to be the star, Lamar Jackson's had his moments, but we still, I look, I don't want to say we wonder, because he carries the Ravens. He's a top quarterback in the league, and he deserves to get paid, and he is an MVP, but he does suck in the playoffs. Like it's not even average. Like, in the playoffs, when they don't let him run, he sucks. Like, he's not good. He has not been good, Lamar Jackson. But he's shown himself. Those 2 guys, which were the less heralded behind Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen, and Baker Mayfield, those 2 guys were less heralded. Those 2 guys have had the success. Those 3 didn't. So usually one guy has success in a great QB draft. 2, you don't have 3 guys, but all 3 are good. And I think it's okay to just accept that Justin Herbert, Tua Tagovailoa, and Joe Burrow are good. They are. So it became this, well, the Dolphins should have gotten Herbert. The Dolphins shouldn't have done anything. The Dolphins should have got Tua. He was the best quarterback coming out until he hurt his hip. And then after Burrow was fucking insane that year, he was the 2nd best quarterback. The Chargers themselves would have drafted him. He just needs some talent around him. He gets the ball out quickly. He's as accurate as any quarterback we've ever had in the league. He has great anticipation. He doesn't take a lot of hits. He's very decisive. He goes through the progressions. His arm's not fantastic, but it's not horrible. He's a great leader, and he's a consummate pro. The right pick. But he needed talent. He's little, and I don't even, like, Colin Cowherd is still quadrupling down on his negative to it. Like, I never understood any of it. It's like, you can see the kid can play. Like, it's not like he's trash. Look at who he's playing with. Devontae Parker drops 3 out of every 4 balls, misses 3 out of every 4 games. That's his number 1. Preston Williams was this 3rd, 4th round dude, maybe even less, who had a lot of raw talent but couldn't catch the ball consistently. Like, no one else could stay on the field. Like, they had no running game. Ahmed, as you can see, wasn't picked up by anyone. He's their 4th string or 3rd string running back now. And their offensive line was abysmal. Like, at least, Burrow's offensive line's horrible, but he had talent around him. Herbert, the offensive line started out not good, but he had talent around him. Tua didn't have any of that. So it was weird how negative people got about him when you could see he had nothing. And come to find out, and the professor put us on this early, Flores didn't like him. And we now really have no idea why Flores didn't like him, because he's obviously a good quarterback. Right now, he's a top 10 quarterback, and the reality is he's probably top 5. Like, most people, if you look at Tua's numbers, he's like number 1 in everything that matters. Fourth quarter efficiency, number one, which is a huge stat. Third down efficiency, number one, huge stat. QBR, which I really don't know what it means, but it must matter. Number one. Like his record's great. He missed 2.5 games for no fucking reason. Like he had a concussion, but was good because they had a bye. But because of optics, he missed 2.5 games, and he still has numbers comparable with anyone in the league. So what would he be if he played those games? He's undefeated this year in games or he might be undefeated total. I don't know. He's undefeated this year at least in games he starts and finishes. Like the dude's legit. Like, and if you're watching preeminent, I don't want to say like ultimate Tua was this Sunday. If you watch Tua this Sunday, and I've been the guy that's been singing his freaking praises, and I get it. They didn't play the Browns aren't fantastic, but the Browns have a good defense. Their run defense isn't great, but they have a good pass defense, and they have guys to get after the quarterback. And they were a team that was playing much better. Tua was dropping dimes. It was ridiculous what he was doing this Sunday. Like it was amazing. Yeah, there you go. That too, Andy. So, not to toot horns and this and that, and who knows what'll happen, right? Like Defo's been on the fence on Tua. He hasn't hated on him, but he hasn't loved him. So, yes, he has to stay healthy. That was something that was an issue coming in and has been an issue since he's been in. He has to stay healthy. He has to stay upright. He can't hold onto the ball ever because he is a smaller dude. That is true. But as we've seen since the concussion, and since he's come back, he has gotten barely touched. The offensive line's doing great, and he's getting rid of the ball. Okay, but he has to stay healthy, and he has to keep playing. And we'll see. We'll see. That's fine. We'll see. But as of now, he's an MVP candidate. And he's right there with Mahomes and probably Hurts as MVP candidates, which was not going to be said going into the year. And they were people were putting him in the 20s when it was ranked at quarterback, or 15 to 20. The dude, like I said, would be top 10 this year. And honestly, if you're talking about playing right now, he's top 5. So tooting horns or not, Herbert or him or not, I don't know. Herbert, look, is about to get a second coach fired. Is it Herbert's fault? No, he didn't hire the coaches. Both his first coach and Staley are not good. And it was Anthony Lynn and now Brandon Staley. Brandon Staley sucks, like 100%. That is not on Herbert. But he has talent around him. And he goes to fourth quarters and throws interceptions. Tua's not doing that in fourth quarters. Tua in the fourth quarter is ridiculous. A week ago, he wasn't great. This week, he was spectacular. And most of his career, he's been really good. So it's very interesting for me to see yesterday Tua for MVP, Tua for MVP, MVP Tua. And all the people that were negative about Tua either shutting up or those who were positive, finding them and calling them out. I think it's great. I think it's okay to be wrong. I'm wrong very often in this. But the Tua thing was weird because they were so vehement about a guy that you could clearly see didn't have the tools around him. So, like, no matter what you want to say about Tua, we've seen you can be look at Tom Brady when he had receivers hurt and had a bad offense. He has his receivers back with a bad offensive line. Look what he is. Yeah, they got to win the last couple of weeks. They didn't look good. Like, Seahawks were overrated, and they still messed around with them and let them come back and almost win with Brady throwing a really stupid-ass interception at the end. And the Rams game was totally the Rams game. If Cooper Kupp gets a first down, their second-to-last drive, the Rams win the game. And the Rams are not good. The Rams are a disaster. So, but you see Brady, the great Brady, and he still can play with behind a bad offensive line or without weapons or both. Look what he is. Look at Aaron Rodgers. Like, so it was just weird. It was a weird thing to have a guy that is young in his career, and he had shown flashes, and had a major injury for people to just write him off. Well, he's taking all those checks and he's cashing it. Miami Dolphins now sit at 7-3, second in the AFC, first in the AFC East. And we'll talk a lot about that with the one and only Dave Hyde coming up next. Defo is not here. Defo is in Atlantic City. He will be back Friday with you. I will be here guiding the ship. We will have a Mike Mayo's Lunchbox today. And at 8:20, we will also speak with ANtwan Staley, guy who's covered a lot of sports and a lot of teams in the football realm, both NFL and college. He now is in New York City with the New York Daily News, beat writer for the New York Jets, and also does cover the NFL. Plus, he's a guy that keeps his eye on the college football world. So we want to talk with him about the college football world as well. Coming up in a couple minutes, we will talk with the one, the only, the great Dave Hyde. Appreciate everyone who's come along with me. Sorry, those who can't stand me talking and ask for me to not interrupt, which, again, when you're just a bit of info, when you're a host, when you talk, that's not interrupting. That's called talking. So sorry if I get defensive. I just find it funny. Like, I know there are certain jobs where people feel free to criticize you. And that's okay, because Defo and I are very honest in our criticisms of people. So it's okay. Criticize me away. This is my voice. I talk fast. I have anxiety. I mumble at times. My equipment's had issues. There's plenty of things to mock me for. Go for it. But I feel if you're going to mock me, I have a right to defend me. That's just something I feel. And I've been doing it my entire life. When you have glasses, which you saw last week, and you have this voice, which you've had since birth, it's wide open to be made fun of. So, yeah, you can turn the other cheek, but what I've learned is that doesn't always work. Like, at some point, you have to have a retort, because fuckheads don't just stop because you don't come back. Sometimes they do, and then sometimes they don't. So sometimes you have to say, you're being a dick. So I will do that. But I still would love you to follow us and watch us, and I apologize for this, but appreciate you. So coming back, we're going to talk with the one and only Dave Hyde about those Miami Dolphins. We'll definitely touch on the Miami Heat, maybe some Panthers. Marlins hire a female president, first organization in the full professional sports to have a female president and GM. So maybe we'll touch on that as well. And, of course, his book, The Good Old Days. Dave Hyde wrote a book about the 72 Dolphins, and we are celebrating their 50th year anniversary. And they are celebrating after the Eagles went down last night. And Dave Hyde has a new book out, or coming out, Swagger, about Jimmy Johnson. So we'll talk about all that with the iconic, the legendary Dave Hyde next, right here. The Defo Show with the Lubie. No Defo, just Lubie, here on the South Florida Live.
Ponies in Style at Champions, the outstanding simulcasting room at beautiful Hialeah Park. Yes, the grand old lady of thoroughbred racing has never been more vibrant, and you can wager on the races from the top tracks around the country while enjoying a cocktail at the Brass Rail Bar or any of the fine food served throughout the facility. If poker is your game, you're covered in style, and you can play all your favorite Vegas-style games, including blackjack, craps, and roulette, in Hialeah Park's sizzling hot casino. Get a player's card when you walk through the door for all kinds of generous amenities, including our favorite, free play, when you come out to the ultimate casino and entertainment destination, Hialeah Park.
Hey folks, Tony Segreto here. Since day one, Catholic Health Services has been part of Old School. And since we've started letting people know about them, it's changed their lives. You see, Catholic Health Services, while being recognized as one of the top places for stroke rehab in the country, it's also about a group of people who not just excel in what they do, from the doctors to the nurses to the therapists, on and on and on. It's how they do what they do every single day that separates them from the pack. They do it with a passion, unmatched, and the inclusion of family in every step of the process. Trust me when I tell you this. If you want the best, unmatched rehab with a special group of skilled, caring people, there is truly only one place, and that one place is Catholic Health Services.
These days, we're all looking for comfort anywhere we can find it. Thank goodness for Landlubbers Raw Bar and Grill in the Plantation location, because they are making sure you are as comfortable as possible. First of all, they're not only open for delivery and pickup. All you have to do is go to landlubbersbarandgrill.com for both pickup and free delivery. Their hours have changed a little bit. Monday through Thursday from 3:30 to 10, and Friday, Saturday, and Sunday from 11:30 to 10. You're going to have the best wings in the world. You're going to have a great burger. You're going to have their amazing soups. Again, Landlubbers, Raw Bar and Grill. It's nice and easy. Just go to landlubbersbarandgrill.com for both your pickup and free delivery. Thank goodness for Landlubbers for making you always feel right at home.
You can't fake caring. Women can sense this immediately. You don't really care. You didn't really want to do any of this.
We now return to the Defo Show.
Welcome back, one and all, to the Defo Show. No Defo, just Lubie here on South Florida Live, a guy that we have been big fans of for years. We've been privileged to talk to him throughout the years. And today is the day. We've talked about this book, I think for well over a year. We've talked about Swagger, based on, written with the one and only Jimmy Johnson, his co-writer, I would say the main author, because he is one of the great writers across America for a long time. Dave Hyde joins us today. So, Dave, congratulations. Today is the day.
Yeah, it's unwrapping of swagger, and Jimmy's up in New York actually going on with Michael Strahan on Good Morning America this morning, and
you're with me.
But yeah, it's finally we get to unwrap swagger, and people get to read it. So it's a fun day for us.
And you and Jimmy will be at the Miami Book Fair this weekend, right? Isn't it this Saturday?
Yeah, on Thursday. Thursday at there's a reception.
Okay.
And then we're going to do a talk and a Q&A at 8 o'clock at Miami-Dade downtown.
So how is things, because I know that there's been a lot around it between Jimmy and yourself, and we've talked about this book for well over a year. This has been a book highly anticipated. We know the pre-orders were out the roof. How has it gone so far, and how do you feel now that the day has finally come?
Well, all my energy was put into the writing of it. Okay. And Jimmy talked, I typed. That was sort of our arrangement. And I'd go down to the Keys and every few weeks for, I don't know, 6-7 months. And we had a lot of fun doing it. Went fishing with them, of course, and various other things. But so the marketing of it was left to the publisher, and that's what they're handling now. And to be honest, I don't even know pre-sales or where they stand or any of that. So, I'm interested. It was interesting to work with a big-time publisher. Scribner's is the high-end wing of Simon and Schuster, and
wow.
And it was a lot of fun working with the people who know what they're doing in marketing, unlike me. So it's interesting.
Well, this isn't your only book, and we've talked with you about this as well, and it's very pertinent today. Still Perfect, the untold story of the Miami Dolphins, as we celebrate 50 years of the Miami Dolphins. And the Dolphins today, or maybe last night, popped their champagne, as the story goes, as the Philadelphia Eagles are no longer undefeated, leaving the Dolphins the only team to ever go undefeated throughout an entire season, including Super Bowl. What are your thoughts on that? Because I grew up a big Dolphin person, so this was a big deal to me. As I get older, I know a lot of people find it obnoxious. What are your thoughts on the whole idea of the getting excited over another team's failures because your record still is intact?
Well, I always cringe when people put it in that context, but yeah. What they get excited about is their team team winning.
Yeah.
That they won in 72. They did something nobody else had. Even though in 72 it wasn't considered this, everybody, they went undefeated. And then in about 85, when the Dolphins played the undefeated Bears in the Orange Bowl, that was the first time it resonated nationally that, the Dolphins are the only team to go undefeated, and it's a big mark that the Bears are going after. And then it sort of crept up. Now, after 50 years, it's pretty remarkable that they did it, and they're still the only team to have done it. And what I always thought is they're celebrating their team more than the failure of some other team. So, and when you look at what these guys, it's been written nationally that, they had nothing else to do with their lives. Go on with your lives. What these guys did with their lives was pretty amazing.
They've done great stuff.
Yeah, it's just amazing what their lives have been.
Well, what's interesting is, and we talked with Larry Zonka yesterday, and it was fitting right before the Eagles lost, and we talked about that. And I don't know if that team had fun like this team is having. This team is having fun at a level that I don't know if Don Shula in the 1970s was looking forward to. But the camaraderie that team had, and we've seen it, that team, and Zonk talked about how Shula pitted them against him to bring them together. Then they all became one big unit. To bring it to today, it feels like this team is having, in a way, like I haven't seen a professional team. They just have, it looks like they're having fun, like the offense, the defense, the special teams outside of Jason Sanders. It feels like they're just one unit, and it felt like that team had that camaraderie where to this day, they're all brothers in arms. For the first time in a long time, the Miami Dolphins don't look like a fractured unit. They look like one team each and every week looking for victory.
Well, the biggest surprise, other than where Tua's stats are, is Mike McDaniel. I mean, what he's been able to do since he walked in the door pretty much an unknown, right? I mean, nobody really knew him other than, he has a sense of humor.
Yeah.
And but he's made, we talk about culture and all that, and nobody really talked about that much with Mike McDaniel, because it wasn't your normal tough guy coach culture that we're used to in football. But it's a very open and honest type of culture where players can talk freely as far as what they really think. And that's developed into something that, he's let players be themselves, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And that's, I think one thing has led to another. Now, what he's really brought is a good offense, a good offensive system to match with some good talent. They now have offense, and look, they're a fun team. They're not only winning, but they're a fun team to watch, because you're seeing, what Tyreek Hill is doing is opening up the whole offense, and then having Jalen Waddle beside him and Tua and the passing game, and so it's been a lot of fun to watch.
Well, and you just brought up the name that was, and I'll still never understand why he was such a lightning rod, Tua, because he seemed to be a good kid in every facet. It was clear that he didn't have talent around him. It was clear by the end that he had a coach that wasn't on his side. So, fine, maybe he's not great, but the vitriol that Tua brought, it was something that I never understood. The passion on both sides too. Oh, he's the man, and it was like, no, he's not the man yet. Oh, he sucks. Well, no, he doesn't suck either. It's in the middle, and that's sort of where you resided. We talked to you before the season, and you weren't anti-Tua or pro-Tua. You're like, look, we'll see. And I liked your comment the other day. Well, he's answered all of them. So whatever questions I had, they've been answered. Have they, Dave? Has Tua answered all the questions you have? Where do you put Tua now? What are your thoughts on the season Tua is having?
Yeah, my question always was, the parade was ahead of what we see on the field.
Yeah.
There was a Tim Tebow, for lack of a better word, cult following to Tua, that he's great. And my thought was, well, maybe he gets there, but let's wait till he gets there before, and this parade was like a mile ahead of what I was seeing on the field for the first 2 years. So, he didn't have talent, and it was odd that everybody's on the media, critics, when the main critics were inside the Dolphin building. They tried to replace him twice, including this offseason with the 45-year-old Tom Brady. So, look what he's done. And I wrote, I think my first line in the column was, it's unprecedented what he's doing here in year 3 after those first 2 years. Look, no one ever questioned whether he's a good guy or not. I mean, the way he answered questions the first 2 years with things swirling around him that I just mentioned was, how could you not root for him? But now we're seeing the results of okay, what can he do in a good offense, and what with good talent around him? And again, I think Mike McDaniel's system and what he's brought has set up, all of them on offense, and you see guys running free in ways that you just don't see, not only on Dolphins in previous years, but look around the league. You rarely see guys running free like this.
Well, no, and it feels like you rarely, outside of those, and look, and I get it, someone in our chat was like, well, they're winning, so that's why they're having fun. No, winning cures all. It's true. But, we haven't seen that here. We haven't seen it. It feels like the defense and the offense pick up off one another, feed off one another in a way we've been waiting for. And this last game was sort of it. The defense started slow again. The offense shot out like a shotgun. And then the defense caught up. And that second half was as good a second half as we've seen this team play as a unit in a long time. And it's got a lot of people to quit. Look, we were just hoping that they'd be a playoff contender. Well, when you look at the AFC, you see the Bills lose 2 in a row. And Josh Allen, there's something wrong with him. It feels like the UCL nerve, whatever. When you look at the Ravens have had their struggles, and they feel like they're playing better football now. The Chiefs always have their issues with defense. What do you do with the Dolphins in the AFC that going into this year seemed very scary, but the Chargers have struggled at times. The Broncos and the Raiders are not what we thought they were. When you look at the Dolphins as a total in that conference, what do you do with them? Because a lot of people are using the SB term, and I haven't heard that since a man named Dan Marino was at the quarterback.
Yeah, I wrote a column last week too. It mentioned Super Bowl. We're not, saying we're not afraid to talk about that around here. And I was like,
Yep.
oh, yeah. Everybody has been for 20 years because there really hasn't been there hadn't been a team worth bringing that up with, right? I mean, the only topic was, wow, can they make the playoffs? Could they win a playoff game? But you look around the NFL, there's no great teams. Even Philadelphia before last night, before they lost, wasn't a team you say, do I really trust what in the playoffs against a really good defense or opponent? No, they're a good team. There's any of 8 teams can win right now, probably, and the Dolphins surprisingly are in that mix. Surprisingly, if we're looking from August. Now you look right now. And just think what can happen if, say, they get Byron Jones back in December. Say this defense, solves a couple of the issues that they have, especially on the road. They're a completely different defense at home than on the road. They're averaging, I think, 32 points given up on the road and 17 at home. So something that they haven't traveled well. Does that change? Then we were into other issues really of, okay, how will this offense play in cold weather, windy weather if they have to do that? We'll probably see that in December coming up. So I mean, we're on to a next stage of questions, but yeah, the Dolphins are, and I can't believe I'm saying this considering the questions everybody, including me, had in August, but they're right there in the mix with everybody.
Well, and talking about a guy who's in the mix right now today, out everywhere you get your books. Swagger, Dave Hyde, Jimmy Johnson. Definitely check that out. We've talked a lot about that and really excited about the book and happy for Dave and Jimmy that it's finally out for the masses to enjoy. The one organization that has won down here consistently for the last 20 plus years, that not only is not scared to talk about titles, it is titles or bust for them, even in years that people don't think it is. Miami Heat struggled a lot, but the last 3 games have been a little bit better. Tyler Hero hasn't played, so it's hurt them offensively. But last night was an interesting game as they were playing a team in the Suns who might not be dominant so far this year, but have been strong this year. And they scored. Bam was great. You got Kyle Lowry was involved. You had Martin involved. And then at the end, Jimmy Butler makes 2 key defensive plays to win. What are your thoughts of the Heat, where they stand now at 7-7, as opposed to about a week ago when they were 4-7?
And it looked a lot better from last night when they're down, 10-11 in the fourth quarter with 8 minutes or so to go, and they come back and win. So, nobody questions how hard they play, how smart Spoelstra is, or that they'll improve through the year, because of every Spoelstra team has improved through the year. The question is, do they need a power forward? Are they big enough to rebound? Can they play, Caleb Martin at the 4 or Lowry and Gabe together out on the at guards as they've done at times? So it'll be interesting to see. You look at the East right now, and look at Boston. I think's won 7 straight, and Milwaukee is healthy, which they weren't at the end of last year. And it's hard to see, to be honest, the Heat matching up against them and those teams in a series. But it seems like we always say that about the Heat. Last year, it comes down to Jimmy Butler missing a 3-pointer at the buzzer, or they're going to the NBA Finals. And like you said, that was a disappointment for them that they didn't go to the finals and didn't compete for a title. And that's the bar for the Heat. And, everybody else in town is just hoping to have a little success.
Well, and before we let you go, we usually touch on the Marlins and the Panthers. The one team we don't talk too much about with you, but I'm very intrigued by is the Hurricanes, talking about teams who had success and are trying to just have a little bit of what the Heat have had the last 2+ decades. Where are you with the Canes? Because I get it. Look, it's year one. And as an FSU fan, I know what Norvell has been. And people looking at it now, and FSU's rolling. And they not only have a good record, but they are beating the teams they're supposed to beat big and playing tough with the ranked teams. Fine. But the first couple of years were rough. I know that. So I understand year one. I totally get it. But when you pay a guy $80 million, when you give a guy a blank check to put together one of the more expensive staffs in the country, when you have the national media propping you up as a top 16 team coming into the year, when you have the national media putting your quarterback in Heisman discussions, that does set the bar higher than most first-year coaches. And we're seeing some other first-year coaches have some success. We're seeing some others fail. That's true. That are also big names. They got a win versus Georgia Tech. They feel a little bit better about themselves. Where are you with the Canes this season and your outlook with the Canes in the Mario Cristobal era?
Well, the money, $80 million and all that's the cost of doing business in the end.
Yeah.
So it was only relevant to me at Miami because they hadn't
They
spent
never
that
do
money
it. Yeah.
before. So where I'm at is I thought they'd be better this year.
Yeah.
At the same time, it's sort of like, as you said, it's year one. Everybody knew if Cristobal wins at Miami, and meaning wins big, it'll be the way, because he's a great recruiter and he brings in the players he wants. And that's not going to be where's he at November of his first year? Is he going to make it or not type of proposition? It's going to be a, 2+ years down the line of, okay, who's he got and how's he developing a program? And that's, you talk to people at Miami in August, and they were like, you could tell by the way they were addressing things off to the side that they didn't like this team, the talent or that they had, and which I didn't pick up on.
Mm-hmm.
And look, the way the Tyler Van Dyke, it was odd at the start how he was used. About the North Carolina game, you saw, okay, they decided to open things up, and you got a little back to what he was playing like last year. Then he gets hurt, and but look, I thought they'd be better this year, but it's not like it's any conclusive referendum on where the Mario Cristobal era goes.
Well, and I get it, what they paid him and what he means to the program. He's not going anywhere, obviously, but the way the fans are, South Florida fans was anyone, they can create a parade for someone before they're great, and they could also end their time before they're horrible. Do you think he gets the patience that is needed to turn around a program ever? Because it's not just this day and age. Back in the day, like Shula, coaches got time. Like Jimmy, you got time to fail a little before you could get better. Dabo Swinney was not good for the first few years with Clemson. You saw what he became. But we see coaches like Scott Frost struggling and getting chances, but them being out. We see Jeff Collins in Georgia Tech, who doesn't even have expectations, out in 2 to 3 years. See, in Wisconsin, where they won every year, but this year, their coach, Paul Chryst, is out. So Miami, even though we've talked with a lot of people who are like, look, they're not the same, Miami fans need to realize that they don't. You talk to Canes fans, it's 1992. That's how Canes see their team. And it's okay. As a Seminole fan, I'm the same way. It's taken me a long time to accept, wow, we made a bowl. Yay. It took me a long time to get here where I'm accepting the small victories. Canes fans, for the most part, don't do that. Do you think Cristobal gets the patience that he will need to turn this program around?
I don't think there's any doubt. And I don't know about the fans.
Yeah.
Because Miami fans typically have been the loudest fans who don't show up. So, but, look at Dan Radakovich, was brought in with Mario, and he knows what it takes to build a big time program from his Clemson time, obviously. And so I have no doubt he's going to get all the support he needs internally, and not just, words and emotions and all that. But he's going to get, money and substantive things that he needs to build a program. So my thought always has been, if this doesn't work with Mario, then maybe Miami just can't be the type of program that as you say, Hurricane fans are in 1992, and they are in their mind in some form. So, I mean, if it can't work with Mario, then Miami's got, I think, a larger problem.
Well, this man does not have a problem. This is a glorious day we've been looking forward to a while, so I can't even imagine how you feel, Dave. Congrats on Swagger. Everyone out there, go grab a copy. It is great, not only because this gentleman wrote it, but because Jimmy Johnson Unplugged is just fun. Jimmy Johnson Plugged is fun, so Jimmy Johnson Unplugged, I can't even imagine. So check out Swagger. It's out now wherever you get your books. Dave, good luck on the book. Congrats, and we look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thanks, Lubie. Good talking with you. Take care.
The one and only Dave Hyde. I appreciate that on this glorious day for him that he talked with us. Jimmy Johnson's on Good Morning America, and Dave Hyde's on the Defo Show with no Defo, just Lubie on South Florida Live. So I appreciate you joining this small program on your big day, Dave. Go and get Swagger. We've heard a lot about it. We've read excerpts about it. We've seen a lot of different parts about it. I will get that book. I will read that book. You should go out there and get that book. Jimmy Johnson, a man who lived a very interesting life, and he tells it all from what we know in Swagger. So go check out Swagger. Coming up next, I will join you for more sports conversation. Again, the Eagles ended their undefeated season. The Dolphins of 72 rejoice, whether they're rejoicing in their failure, rejoicing in their own success. They still remain the only NFL franchise to ever go undefeated wire to wire, as Defo likes to say. So, as a Dolphin fan, I was rooting against the Eagles, and I was happy when they lost. Is that immature? I don't know. Is that childish? I don't know. Is that good sportsmanship? I don't know. But I'm a Dolphin fan and appreciate them still being the only undefeated team ever. Miami Heat got a nice win yesterday. It is funny to try and figure out what they are, because it's like a lot of what we've done with Brady, where even when Brady struggles, we've condemned him years ago. But most people, when Brady struggles, are scared to actually call it out, because around the corner is Brady coming back and being great. I mean, that's what the Heat is for the South Florida, right? The years that you thought you weren't sure what they'd be, maybe a 6 seed, 7 seed, they go to the freaking finals. So when they start off 4-7, when they lose to the Kings, when they are just, they're not really infighting, but they just look out of sync. They just look like they're missing something. You still don't know if you should be like they're done, because you just, with Jimmy Butler, the way he plays, with Spoelstra, with the success he's had, with what this organization has done, they usually figure it out. I don't know if they're with the Bucks or the Celtics. I thought they were looking at them. Oladipo was supposed to be a key cog of this team. He's supposed to be a big part of this team. He's not there. It was thought to be he had the injury was healed from, and it was behind him. Well, it's come that it's a chronic injury. So if it's chronic, that means it's not going anywhere. Then he's not going to be of use to them. Like, I'm not saying he's never going to play basketball again, but he's not going to be the guy that I thought he could be. I was being naive, and I thought, wow, he looked good defensively in the playoffs. Wow, with an offseason to get his offensive game back, he could be back to being an all-star. And he got him for nothing. Wow, that's a 3rd/4th possible all-star level player. That's amazing. Well, he hasn't played at all, and he still has that injury. So that's really what took them from, to me, being a top 3 seed. Dude, they'll make the playoffs, and they should be a top 6 seed, and they may win a series. But what they were last year, I don't know if they can be that. I just don't. But, again, like Dave said, you never know with this organization. And there's always a move around the corner. Riley doesn't, pun intended, stand pat. So we'll see what goes on with the Heat. It was a nice win yesterday over the Suns. They were in it. They got down, and they found a way to fight back, and then made the defensive plays versus a really good offensive team to win the game. It's regular season. It's early. But those are the kinds of things they did it with the Warriors. Like, when they're playing these bigger games, they seem to get up. And if they can do that, then you never know. Talked about the Canes. The Marlins do hire. I have to get the name right, but their first female president. They are the only organization in the 4 professional American sports, or North American, at least American sports, to have a woman president and GM with Kamang, and they're hired yesterday. So good for them. I hope it leads them to victory. Like, I'm open. I don't care, man, women, whatever. I want them to win. And Kamang has not been good as a GM. I don't care what your gender is. I treat you, a man or woman, the same. If she's been doing a great job, wonderful. Derek Jeter left with his tail between his legs, and they're worse now than when they. That's the thing that's annoying about the Marlins. It's not that they're not better. They're worse. They had at least a young core of talented guys that Jeter traded away. They don't have that. They are without a rudder. They have some young pitchers that look promising, but outside of Alcantara, who may win the Cy Young, the rest of that rotation's in. Pablo Lopez is a solid pitcher, but he's not great, and they're talking about moving him. Eliezer Hernandez is solid, but not great. Sixto was supposed to be great, didn't pitch the entire freaking year. Edward Cabrera has a lot of talent, and he's been injured, and he's been inconsistent. So they literally have nothing to build on. So they're now worse position than when this regime came in. They're in worse position than when Kim Maine came in. Worse. So I hope women power, yeah. Now go be good at your job. Because that's the problem, is the microscope's going to be shining on them, looking down. I'm sorry, not shining, a light shines. The microscope's going to be looking down on them. Hopefully they can prove the brass right for hiring them, and they can turn around an organization that has been down since 2000. I guess they had the little blip during the COVID, but from 2003 to now, it's been a lot of So Marlins made that higher. We will come back and talk more about your sports world. There is no Defo. There is just me. Defo will be back Friday. Defo's back Thursday. He'll be with you Friday. We will have a Kicking It Old School Tony Segredo tomorrow. We will have a Hialeah Park Trivia Challenge Thursday. And we will have a full-fledged Degenerate Friday. Come next, more of your sports convo. A lot of South Florida, but a lot more as well. Right here. The Defo Show with Lubie. No Defo, just Lubie on South Florida Live.
Folks, Tony Segredo here. Let me ask you a question. What do you look for when you go out to eat? Good food, obviously. Friendly atmosphere, not too loud, but good energy, reasonable prices, and a place where you feel comfortable. All those ingredients, no pun meant there, are hard to find unless you're talking about the Texas Roadhouse. You see, they encompass all of those attributes. Really, really good food, amazing atmosphere, good for a family, good for a date, or just a night out for yourself, and prices that will make you extremely happy. Their ribs, unmatched. Steaks, hand-cut every day. Everything, and I mean everything, is made on site, including their incredible bread. It's the one day, folks, that you can forget about low-carb diets. Trust me when I tell you, Texas Roadhouse, your restaurant, your destination when you say, where should we go and eat tonight?
From the newly renovated sports bar to the beautiful bayside views captured at the Tiki Bar, Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill has it all. Located at mile marker 104, the Big Chill also offers waterfront dining while experiencing breathtaking sunset views of the Florida Keys. It's simply the hottest spot in the Keys to cool off. That's Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill at mile marker 104 in Key Largo. For more information, call today at 305-453-9066.
Recently we realized it's not just hurricane season that can hurt us. Any time of year, things can happen to your home or business. And the insurance company can be your friend, but they also can be your enemy. Horizon Public Adjusters, Justina Testa, are here for you to help this process go so much easier. Before you call the insurance company, call Horizon Public Adjusters and Justina Testa at 954-809-8752. Would you go?
Mr. Pentangeli, were you a member of the Corleone family? Did you serve under Capo regime under Vito Corleone, also known as the Godfather?
I never knew no Godfather.
Angela, you are contradicting a sworn statement you previously made to me and signed. I ask you again, sir, here and now under oath, were you at any time a member of a crime organization headed by Michael Corleone?
I don't know nothing about that. Oh, I was in the olive oil business with his father, but that was a long time ago, that's all.
We have a sworn affidavit. We have it. Your sworn affidavit that you murdered on the orders of Michael Corleone. Do you deny this confession?
Look, the FBI guys, they promised me a deal. So I made up a lot of stuff about Michael Corleone, because that's what they wanted. But it was all lies. Everything. And I kept saying, Michael Corleone did this, and Michael Corleone did that. So I said, yeah, sure.
It's now time for the Defo Show.
till you walked out the door. I didn't know. I didn't know.
Welcome back, one and all, to the Defo Show. No Defo, just Lubie here on South Florida Live. Working on growing, doing our best to get bigger and better, and appreciate everyone who has found us and those that continue to find us, and appreciate Dave Hyde for joining us on this wonderful day as Swagger, which we've talked about for a long time. I mean, we were still on the radio when we were talking about Swagger with him, and it's been well over a year since we've been off the radio. Is out today. Swagger is released today, so check that out. Written with and about Jimmy Johnson. We talked a lot about last night's Philadelphia Eagles and Washington Commanders game, as the Miami Dolphins remain the only undefeated team in NFL history to go and win a Super Bowl. Yes, the Patriots went undefeated all the way to a Super Bowl, but then lost the Super Bowl. The Dolphins were the only one. And yeah, it was only 17 games total. That's true, but they did win the Super Bowl. And the Eagles were 8-0 up until last night, and they were upended by the Washington Commanders. They had started to show signs of struggling. And look, you look at the NFL as a whole, it's interesting because Dave talked about it, and he's not wrong. Like, the Eagles on paper look scary, and Jalen Hurts is better than I thought it would be. True. I don't know if he's as good as the stats he's put up. And that probably sounds like weird verbiage put together, but it's the truth. Like, he's put up a lot of great stats. Do you consider Jalen Hurts great? I know they do this year. I mean, last night he was like, he had a really nice throw that his own player fumbled, and outside of that, it was Like, and that's sort of what I think of him as. Like, that's why the Tua stuff to me was so confusing, because when you see Tua with any time, he looks really good. Jalen Hurts has time, and he's like, if guys are running wide open, yeah, Tua does throw to some open guys this year because Mike McDaniel has an amazing way of scheming. Like, and Hyde talked about that too. Like, it's the NFL. The guys are open is having maybe a step. You see Dolphins receivers running wide open, like it's a freaking college game, like a top 5 team versus an unranked team. You don't see that in the NFL. Like, so his scheming and the way that these guys are running their routes is spectacular. But that's not every play. You watch that throw from Tua where he is going across his body. Remember, he's left-handed, so he's going across his body, across the field on the out to Jalen Waddle, who's being covered tightly by Newsome, who was a first-round pick, who is over 6 feet tall, who is diving for the ball midair, and the ball goes over his hand in stride to Waddle, who's able to collect it and then get a first down. When you watch that touchdown to Trent Sherfield, in coverage, Tua had 2 dudes bearing down on him. He throws a strike, corner of the end zone, in stride, allowing Sherfield to catch it and be able to get 2 feet down. Like, it's not just throwing to wide open guys. These are not throws you see Jalen Hurts make regularly. And these are the throws that why I was so, and yes, Dave was talking about the parade that came for Tua from a lot of people before he was great. Well, because you knew he could be great. Like, it's not, people are shocked at what you're seeing by Tua. That's dumb. Like, he did this at Alabama, and I get it. He was barely touched. Okay, well, he's barely touched now. Like, we've seen in the NFL, teams have good offensive lines that give their quarterback time. That's sort of the goal. Yeah, we get in this day and age, it's hard to find that. We get in this day and age, out of the NFL teams, like 3/4 of them have bad offensive lines. It's an era where it's hard to find offensive linemen. True. But there are teams that have good offensive lines, and their quarterbacks don't get touched. Patrick Mahomes is not one that gets rushed a lot. The 2 games we saw him get rushed a lot, that AFC Championship game and the Super Bowl versus the Bucs, he struggled. Like, that's the name of the game. So, to me, to blame Tua because, well, you're calling him great before he's great. Well, yeah, I mean, he has nothing, and he still was the 4th least sacked quarterback in the league when he had nothing. He was still getting rid of the ball, putting up decent stats when he had nothing. So that's, to me, the most impressive thing about Mike McDaniel is he's made everyone look good. Like, Tyreek Hill was already great. Now Tyreek Hill has become a leader, which people didn't realize he was, which I'm sure he was in Kansas City, but that wasn't highlighted. The cheetah aspect, the speed was highlighted here in Miami because he's totally been a big part of turning around this culture. Tyreek Hill is seen as a leader. Jalen Waddle is seen as just a consummate pro. You're watching this defense. Jalen Phillips was a guy that transferred from UCLA because he couldn't get on the field because of injuries, and he was frustrated with the medical staff. But a lot of people thought that was also him. Like, it wasn't, most people don't blame medical staffs are good, like across the board. It's people who know what the hell they're doing. So, like, when people blame the medical staff, like Shaq bitched about the Heat's medical staff and said the Suns staff was better. Like, what are you talking about? The Heat have one of the best staffs of everything. So that's just a guy bitching. Like when Jalen Phillips had issues with UCLA transferred, a lot of it was on him. People thought a lot of it was he didn't bust his tail. He didn't work hard. He didn't want it, quote unquote. He went to Miami, had a great year. He came to the pros. People thought, okay, we'll see. Well, he struggled early, but you're seeing him come up. You're seeing all these guys like that either were no name or even some of the names that have had struggles play well together. And that's a testament to Mike McDaniel. I mean, the guy's a little weird. He talks like Truman Capote, and he sort of does. He talks very quiet, very mild-mannered. He barely opens his mouth. So a lot of the time you don't know what the hell or if he's saying anything. But he gets it. And the big question was, can you be fun and still be a coach, right? Because if you're too much fun, then they're not going to take you seriously. Well, this team's very disciplined. They're not just haphazard. That's a funny thing about Jack Daniels commented earlier in our chat. Well, they were having fun with Dan Campbell. No, they weren't. They had the beginning because he was old school and it brought back something in them from when they were children. So for 2 games, they thought it was cool. And then they realized, oh, this guy's a fucking moron. Like this guy wants to be Cro-Magnon man and take football back 50 years in the way he calls plays and the way he coaches. And they laughed at him and they thought it was a fucking joke and he was dreadful. And the same thing's happening in Detroit where he doesn't want to move into the modern day. Like their offense is fine, but the way he coaches is stupid. It just is. So no, the fun that they had with him is not the fun they're having now. Like, and it's not just the winning. Remember, they did have struggles this season. The team still had fun in those struggles. We might not have, the media might not have nationally. The teams had fun all year. It's different. You can see it with your eyes. It's palpable. Like they're going out there, not only picking each other up, but Tyreek Hill is the ultimate star. The dude had at half like 3 catches, or in the second half, 3 catches for 30 yards. And he wasn't bitching. He wasn't moaning. He wasn't complaining. He was engaged. Like that's not normal. Like it's just not. Defense, Bradley Chubb comes over, gets this big deal. And until the second half, you didn't see much of him, but he was involved. He was picking other teammates up. It's the kind of culture, and people mock culture. And Defo and I, for years, mock culture until you watch the Heat. There's something to be said for an organization that wins no matter what, no matter who's there. Like, and that's the thing the Dolphins haven't had. And Brian Flores was trying to bring the Patriots culture, which has worked for Belichick and no one else. All of his disciples have tried to do that, and it didn't work. What's working is Mike McDaniel, who's doing something from scratch, doing something of his own, doing something different. The guy's like, you know what? I may seem goofy. I'm not. I'm from fucking Yale. Like, I actually do. He has discipline, and he's on the players, and doesn't let them get away with shit. But you also don't have to be a hard ass. You can also crack a joke with them. You can also sing lyrics from a song. You can be fun in a press conference and take selfies. Like, you can realize that it's okay to be a little irreverent, and the world won't explode because you're not Nick Saban or Bill Belichick. And so far it's working. We'll see. Look, well, and that's the thing. They've had struggles. They lost a few games in a row. They looked off. Mike McDaniel didn't change. Like, he didn't lose it. He's had some issues with going forward on 4th and 1 and calling stupid plays. For a guy that has a quarterback who's mobile, you can get rid of it quickly, has speed everywhere. He's running draws and going 5 wide. Like, there's a middle in there, Mike. But outside of that, and he's overcome those because the Dolphins completed one of those this weekend, and the Dolphins finished the game on long drives. Like, I don't know if he's the savior or any of that shit, but he's fun. And this team has become fun under him. And it at least feels like he gets it. It feels like he understands you do need some old school. You need tough, and it's a tough sport, and you have to be disciplined. But you also have to let men be men. You have to treat them like they're freaking adults and have expectations for them and expect them to meet those expectations. And that's what we've seen from the Dolphins. And it feels like the sky's the limit. It feels like they're just scratching the surface. The addition of Bradley Chubb was huge. It seemed to have sparked Jalen Phillips and Ingram. The 3 of them were getting at that quarterback a lot in that 4th quarter. And that's something we haven't seen the entire season. Emmanuel Ogbah will be out the year, but the thing is, and I don't mean to be mean, where was he? Like, he would be good for depth, but Emmanuel Ogbah was doing nothing. And they just gave him a nice deal. Like, he was doing nothing. So it's just interesting to see. For most of the season, it was the offense that was fun and exciting. Well, this last game, the defense was fun and exciting too. And when you have an offensive defense playing in lockstep and concert together like that, there's not a lot of teams that have that. Like they're just not. Like even the Chiefs, for all their success, the defense has always been a question mark. And look at the NFC, like the Eagles. Last night was weird. Like the Commanders are not a good team, and they dominated that game. They should have won by more. Like they dominated that game. So right now the NFL seems pretty wide open, and the Miami Dolphins are right in the thick of things, which is something mid-November we have not been able to say. Mid-90s, because even in the end of Marino's career, like maybe they make the playoffs, but you weren't considering them to do anything. Like they are a contender, a legitimate contender. And I am just in awe of how fast it seems like it turned around because, yeah, they were winning games last year with Brian Flores, but it didn't feel like they were going to win big. It felt like there was enough questions where you didn't know. This dude has come in, and it feels like they've done a 180. Like and they seem like they're not settling. Like this isn't it for them. Like they want more. So we shall see. We're going to give you more next. ANtwan Staley, a guy that we've talked a lot of Dolphins with over the years. Covered the Canes, covered the Noles, covered the Carolina Panthers, covered the Oregon Ducks. Now he covers the New York Jets for the New York Daily News and also the NFL as well. And he's a big college football guy. He's covered a lot of college football. So we'll talk a little bit of all things football next with ANtwan Staley, the Defo Show. Defo did hear from Defo. Thinking of having him on. Probably we'll just have him on tomorrow before we have Kicking It Old School with Tony Segredo. He is an AC. He is doing well, and he's up around 8 o'clock. So look at him. So he must be doing even better than I had expected. So thank goodness. No Defo. He'll be back Friday. You'll get more of me with ANtwan Staley. Next, the Defo Show. No Defo. Just Lubie here on South Florida Live.
Ponies in Style at Champions, the outstanding simulcasting room at beautiful Hialeah Park. Yes, the grand old lady of thoroughbred racing has never been more vibrant, and you can wager on the races from the top tracks around the country while enjoying a cocktail at the Brass Rail Bar or any of the fine food served throughout the facility. If poker is your game, you're covered in style, and you can play all your favorite Vegas-style games, including blackjack, craps, and roulette, in Hialeah Park's sizzling hot casino. Get a player's card when you walk through the door for all kinds of generous amenities, including our favorite, free play, when you come out to the ultimate casino and entertainment destination, Hialeah Park.
Hey folks, Tony Segredo here. You know, since day one, Catholic Health Services has been part of old school. And since we've started letting people know about them, it's changed their lives. You see, Catholic Health Services, while being recognized as one of the top places for stroke rehab in the country, it's also about a group of people who not just excel in what they do, from the doctors to the nurses to the therapist, on and on and on. It's how they do what they do every single day that separates them from the pack. They do it with a passion, unmatched, and the inclusion of family in every step of the process. Trust me when I tell you this. If you want the best, unmatched rehab with a special group of skilled, caring people, there is truly only one place, and that one place is Catholic Health Services.
These days, we're all looking for comfort anywhere we can find it. Thank goodness for Landlubbers Raw Bar and Grill in the Plantation location because they are making sure you are as comfortable as possible. First of all, they're not only open for delivery and pickup. All you have to do is go to landlubbersbarandgrill.com for both pickup and free delivery. Their hours have changed a little bit. Monday through Thursday from 3:30 to 10, and Friday, Saturday, and Sunday from 11:30 to 10. You're going to have the best wings in the world. You're going to have a great burger. You're going to have their amazing soups. Again, Landlubbers, Raw Bar, and Grill. It's nice and easy. Just go to landlubbersbarandgrill.com for both your pickup and free delivery. Thank goodness for Landlubbers for making you always feel right at home.
You can't fake caring. Women can sense this immediately. You don't really care. You didn't really want to do any of this.
We now return to the Defo Show.
Do want to say a couple things before we bring on this gentleman. Yes, it's Carolyn Carr. Carolyn, let me get the name right. Sorry. Carolyn O'Connor. I apologize. Carolyn O'Connor is the new president, first female president of the Marlins, making the Marlins the only professional team of the four major American professional sports to have a president, a female president and female GM. Carolyn O'Connor is the hire for the Marlins. And we do say condolences to those of Chuck Carr. I was a huge Chucky Carr fan growing up. He was the short guy that was fast. He was really fun with that expansion Marlins team. Chuck Carr passed yesterday, so we send our regards to his family, friends, and a sad day as he was one of the beginning members of that Marlins franchise, a guy that was on with us in our early days as a tandem, Defo and I. He's gone on to bigger and better things. Literally now, the beat writer for the New York Jets for the New York Daily News, up there in the Big Apple, the one and only ANtwan Staley joins me here this morning. Good morning, Antwan. How you doing, man?
I'm all right. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Appreciate you getting up early with me before we bounce around, because I know you're a guy that follows football at large. Your main gig these days is covering the New York Jets, and maybe you're the good luck charm, because for about as long as the Dolphins have been in, the Jets haven't been much better. Well, they're really good this year, and it is your inaugural year with the Jets. How has it been to get up there and be around the Jets when they're this?
Well, I think it's like a certain level of excitement, I think, among fans. Obviously, as you alluded to, I mean, there's been a lot of down years, really, since 2015, they hadn't had a winning record. And, now they're competing in the division, seem like they have a shot to make the playoffs. And a lot of people are definitely excited. I think their defense is playing really well. It's really led the charge there. Robert Sala's done a great job. I think, a lot of people made fun of his comment talking about he's going to take receipts, but I think the team is really rallying around that and played well recently. So, yeah, we'll see how things pan out the last 8 games of the season. But, yeah, the team really it's definitely been one of the biggest surprises in the NFL.
What have you seen with Zach Wilson? Because he's a guy that was highly touted coming out of college, 2nd overall pick, and you're watching Trevor Lawrence struggle, but you're watching Justin Fields soar, and a lot of people are wondering, maybe the Jets could have gotten him. You've seen the Jets play well. He sort of hasn't. What is the mood about Zach Wilson around the Jets franchise?
I mean, they feel confident in him.
Okay.
I mean, they'll tell you that, just because his numbers don't necessarily stand out, that he has made some plays for them and helped them win. I mean, I will say in the Bills game, he played a lot better than he did against New England. They ended up having 1 touchdown, 0 interceptions. He did have the fumble turnover against Buffalo, but, all in all, a 72% completion percentage. He definitely played well. I mean, he's had his moments there, just like any young player. He's had some moments. I think he played well against the Dolphins too earlier this year. But obviously some games like the game against New England where he throws 3 interceptions and has those wrong-headed plays from time to time. You just have to limit that. And I think they want him to play boring football. And I know that's something that he's still working on. And he wants to throw the ball in the coverage and trust his arm, but they just want him to be able to play mistake-free football, and I think that gives them the opportunity to win anytime they're on the field, especially with their defense.
Look, you've covered the NFL between the Panthers, the Dolphins, just at large. You do some of that with the New York Daily News now. The AFC East, by many, was considered to be an interesting division going to the other. Patriots were a big question mark. The Jets were supposed to be miserable. The Dolphins were trying to find their way, and then you had the Bills, who were supposed to be the toast of the NFL. Right now, the AFC is the only, I think, division where everyone is above 500, and the Jets are a big reason for the success of the AFC. Where do you see the Jets when you take a step back? I know you're in the middle of it now, but when you've covered the league at large, when you look at the AFC, who isn't as strong as people thought it was going to be, with teams like the Broncos, maybe the Chargers, the Raiders, not as good as people thought they would be, where do you put the Jets? Like, are they a team that you would consider a true playoff contender, as they are? They do have a 6-3 record right now.
Yeah. I mean, I think you have to. I mean, it would be the 5th seed in the playoffs right now. I mean, obviously, they have the tiebreakers over the Dolphins and Bills. So if they beat the Patriots on Sunday, they'll actually be winning the division. But yeah, I think you have to this halfway through the season. I mean, they got to, like I say, the defense is really great. I think it's a lot better than what people projected to be. They offensively, they like to run the football there. They've had some injuries, definitely to the offensive line, too. We talked about Zach Wilson. But, yeah, I mean, I think they're definitely a team that can, you look at the rest of their schedule. They have 8 games left. I mean, there's no reason to think why they can't win 10, possibly 11 games. We'll see how that pans out. But, yeah, I definitely think they have a legit shot not only to make the playoffs, but depending on who they play, they might have a shot to win a playoff game too, and that's something that I think a lot of people didn't necessarily see coming too. But in the AFC East right now, all 4 teams will be in the playoffs, and it's definitely to be the best division in football. It's definitely you have New England bringing up the rear, but they're still over 500 and would be the 7th seed right now. And you have the Dolphins number 1 in virtue because they have a bye this week, and the Jets had a bye last week, so we'll see how that all plans out. But it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a fun 8 weeks between all 4 of those teams.
Well, and the Bills, the interesting story with them is, and you look, what I don't want to know if the term is tailspin, but when you're considered the cream of the crop in the NFL and you've now lost 2 games in a row, those are struggles people were not necessarily seeing for the Buffalo Bills. And both games ended with Josh Allen really making mistakes that he hadn't been making a lot this season and the end of last season. What are you seeing with the Bills? Like, should there be concerns with them? Because to me, I don't know, it's not the baseball season in length, but there are dogs days. There are, like great teams do have their struggles. We've seen them with the Chiefs in the past. Do you see any quote unquote chinks in the armor of the Buffalo Bills? I mean, the last 2 weeks, they have not looked as we had seen them coming into the season and lots of points in the season.
Well, I think it's 2 different. I think the 2 losses are 2 separate things. I think you look at the Jets game. I definitely think. The defense was outstanding and made Josh Allen look really mortal. I mean, came into the game being, I think a lot of people thought he was the favorite to win the NFL MVP, and he ended up throwing 2 interceptions, no touchdowns, and they were able to get pressure on him and just limit him outside of early in the game when he was running the ball. So yeah, I think that was a big issue too. And quite frankly, you look at the Vikings game. I mean, Allen came into it not 100% healthy. I mean, I know a lot of people looked at, figured he was, healthy enough to play, and obviously he was against Minnesota, with the, the arm and elbow injury. But he definitely doesn't look like himself too. I think the defense for the Bills really also let them down too in the game against the Vikings. They let some explosive plays. Obviously, remember the Dalvin Cook play, and Justin Jefferson was just kind of out of this world. Playing like the best wide receiver in football. So yeah, I think there's 2 separate instances there. I mean, the Jets-Bills game really could have went either way. I thought their defense played well enough to win that game, whereas in the Vikings game, they certainly did not. Giving up more than 30 points per game. I mean, you're going to lose games throughout the course of the year. I mean, they wasn't going to go, 16-1, but it is a little bit of concern, especially when, the rest of the division is as strong as what it is. And you're trying to get that home field advantage. And you don't want to have to go to Kansas City again in the postseason, although I know they beat them in the regular season. But, as we saw last year in the playoffs, the Chiefs have that great home field advantage. And, that'd be the difference between you making the Super Bowl or not.
Well, and the Bills also have not only a great home field advantage because of their fans, but it's like -70. So there's nothing like Buffalo literally in this country. So the idea is you get it home, it goes through Buffalo. It's not leaving Buffalo. And right now that is a question. You brought up the AFC East. We've talked about it. The team that we first met that you covered was the Miami Dolphins. You still have lots of Miami Dolphins faithful. You still will throw a lot of Dolphin stuff out there. So I definitely appreciate that being down here. And I get a little bits of info from ANtwan about the Dolphins. You did not cover this Dolphins. The Dolphins you covered was not fun like this, both on offense and defense. They were fun for a lot of different reasons off the field, but for the first time in a long time, the fun is squarely on the field. What have you seen from the Miami Dolphins this season? How for real do you think they and Tua are?
Well, I think they are for real. I think Tua's an MVP candidate right now. I mean, they're playing like a top 3 quarterback in the league, and accuracy. Everybody knows how accurate he was, but just the decision making, I think, is so much better than a year ago. And you're seeing Mike McDaniel and just in year 1, making that much big of a difference, and also like just seeing Tua just be super confident. I mean, even last year, I mean, even when he was playing well, you didn't see that that confidence to show, whether it be in press conferences or throughout the course of games. Now you're seeing him really feel like he's coming out of his shell a little bit too, and I think the team is rallying around him. Obviously, they've gotten a lot better on the offensive line, and Armstead, that was a big addition, and obviously, getting also another MVP candidate, Tyreek Hill, has also made a big impact too as well. So, offensively, I think they're as good as anybody and can beat anybody in the league. Defensively, yeah, they got some issues too. I don't know. I think they played well against the Cleveland Browns. Obviously, not necessarily one of the better teams, but one of the better rushing teams in the NFL. But I still have some concerns about their defense, especially in the playoffs. You're gonna have to win, and you have to win shootouts. And that's not necessarily a recipe for success there. But finding a guy like a Jeff Wilson there with the running game, I feel like that's something they're gonna have to do if they're gonna advance later on in January. But yeah, it's like having the Jets and Dolphins good at the same time once again, and I think it's good for obviously for the division, but it's also good for fans too. Just having both teams, especially the last game of the season is going to mean a whole lot. It could be like 8:20 game on Sunday night, depending, and the stakes could be pretty high for that one.
It's been a long time that a Dolphins Jets like December January game mattered, and this game may be for the freaking division. So it's definitely, it feels like they're on a collision course for one another at the end of this season. What's interesting is, and I bring it up because you cover the Dolphins during a lot of interesting coaching hires and coaching tenures, to now look at these two teams where they have, and they're actually best of friends. Like Saleh and McDaniel are like really close. Like they've coached a long time together, like well before their time in San Francisco. Like I don't know if it was you. Someone wrote an article that was interesting about
Houston.
Their relationship. I thought it was you. Their relationship and how they're night and day in their personalities, but they have not only that much respect but love for each other. Which, when you look at how their teams are playing, you can sort of see that the players have bought in, and that's something I'm intrigued by. Like, you have covered all these teams. Like, can you tell when a team buys in versus they don't? Because you're around these teams. When you cover a team like you do, you travel with them, or you're just around them, and you get side conversations, and you can get personalities, and you can get clicks and whatnot. Like, you've been around winning and losing as a writer, reporter. Can you see the difference with your eyes and almost feel it as a tangible thing when a team has bought in versus when a team hasn't?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been around a lot of losing teams. I've been around a lot of them. They've kind of checked out on certain coaches. They may not say it necessarily with the words, but just their actions. So yeah, I mean, you can definitely tell when things are not going right. Even if things are not going well, like some of the teams still might be buying into what the coach is selling. But I've also seen it on the flip side, with Joe Philbin, and also Adam Gase too, and Ron Rivera, briefly with the Panthers on my team. Like you can just tell the players aren't necessarily buying the message, or they're not, or it's time to make a move as far as coaching. And yeah, you could just, obviously, just the language that they're saying, and like I say, body language. Some players may actually express it, verbally, that they're not necessarily happy. But yeah, I think with these two teams, with the Dolphins, I think you can just see how excited they are, and having a guy like Mike McDaniel, just at least for me from afar, you can tell like it's a breath of fresh air compared to Brian Flores. While they were winning games, it just seemed like players weren't able to have their personality, especially with Tua. And now you're seeing that it's kind of signed through, and obviously winning cures a lot of different things with the Jets. I think they bought into Robert Saleh's message year one. It's just the roster wasn't necessarily really good, especially coming off of Adam Gase and that whole ordeal. And now you're seeing, Joe Douglas put together, along with Saleh, put together a really good roster, and it's really making a difference there with a lot of young players. And sky's the limit for them, and they're only going to get better, I think, especially with more additions throughout the agency and also the draft coming up next year too as well.
Well, when you take it out to the rest of the NFL, you can see some of the organizations where the coaching and the players don't get on the same page. Look, the Packers end up getting a nice victory this weekend, and Aaron Rodgers was excited. But in that game, you saw LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers go at it. And there's always been this sort of tension between, it feels like, Rodgers and LaFleur and Rodgers and the organization. You're looking at in Los Angeles with the Chargers, where Justin Herbert is a star. The dude could play. Brandon Staley seems to not be a good coach. Like it seems to fall short so many times. When you look around the league, like what are some of the teams that to you are the most disappointing? I mean, the Raiders, Josh McDaniels gets another run at head coach. The Raiders are supposed to be a playoff contender, and they are abysmal. Like, who to you is maybe the most disappointing, or more the teams that are disappointing this season?
Yeah, I think you have to start with I wasn't sure about the Raiders, but I don't think anybody saw 2-7 coming. It's not coming, especially when they won. They finished 10-7 last year, and Rich Bisaccia, took over for John Gruden, and a lot of people thought he should have gotten a coaching role, or at least been given an opportunity to coach the team for another year, especially considering they made that run, but. Mark Davis decided he wanted to, make a splashy hire and go with Josh McDaniels, and it's kind of a disaster. And we talked about, teams not responding to a message. You could already tell the Raiders have kind of checked out. You listen to Devontae Adams, and players are not buying. All the players are not buying into the message. Derek Carr kind of said the same thing too as well. And Mark Davis said he's going to bring back Josh McDaniels. I don't know how you do that. When, the players are not already not listening to the message. It's not the fact that they're losing; it's just the fact that players are not responding to him. And then you're going to bring him back for another year. It just seems like a total disaster. So yeah, for me, it would start there. Green Bay, they still have an opportunity to make the playoffs, but when you don't have playmakers and you're missing Devontae Adams and the offensive line, as bad as what it is. You become one-dimensional, but they were able to get the win against the Cowboys. We'll see if that can, something that they can propel their season with. But, I really thought they would be a lot better than what they were and at least be, competing for the division crown. But it looks like the Vikings are going to kind of completely run away with that. So, yeah, those will be two teams there. The Chargers, I still think, may find their way into the playoffs. But, I never was a big fan of the Brandon Staley hire to begin with. I know, a lot of people were riding the Sean McVay wave there, but, you need somebody that can, like kind of what the Miami Dolphins have with Tua and Mike McDaniel. You need somebody like that with Justin Herbert, and I just don't think a guy like that with Staley is the right fit.
Last few things here with ANtwan Staley, New York Jets beat writer, also covers the NFL for the New York Daily News. You are a guy that's covered a lot of college football, and to this day, I know you're a big college football fan and keep your eye on the college football world. Your last gig before this, you were covering Oregon. I know you've covered the Canes and the Noles in your time as a reporter, writer. What are your thoughts on the season so far? Because it is interesting. It's for the first time, Bama is out of the playoff picture. They almost have lost 5 games because this last weekend they were very close to losing. Do have 2 losses on the record this year. You've seen LSU come back under Brian Kelly. You've seen Oregon, a team you were covering up until the Jets. Dan Lanning was doing a really good job this last weekend, sort of subbed their toe on Washington, which really seems to be, whether it's Cristobal or Dan Lanning, their big thing whenever they're heading toward a playoff. They take it sort of a dumb loss. Who are your playoff teams right now? That's the thing I'm trying to figure out is, Michigan, Ohio State, winner of that. Okay. Georgia's probably in. Okay. TCU had their big test this weekend and they got past Texas. Okay. Who is that 4th team? And it feels like you were in SEC country. You have Gator ties. It feels like it's going to go to an SEC team. I'm just curious what you do with the Tennessee and LSU at this point.
Well, I mean, you don't do anything with LSU at least until they beat Georgia in the SEC championship. Then, that brings up a whole different kind of conversation to the point where either they get in, or you may have Tennessee, and you may have 3 SEC teams possibly get in. So I think that's going to be a great debate there. But I think Ohio State, Michigan is going to be fun in a couple of weeks. Let's say if Michigan loses a very, very close game in Columbus, Michigan might have the argument they deserve to be in the playoffs too. So for me, I would, for right now, just as it stands right now, going into the last 2 weeks of the season, I would have obviously Georgia, Ohio State. I still would have Michigan there. Obviously, I know that's going to play itself out. And then you have TCU. Right? I'm still not necessarily sold on TCU, although they did beat Texas, which I didn't think they were going to do. But that would be my 4th team. But I think eventually Tennessee's going to find their way into the playoffs too. And then LSU, we'll see if they can pull off the upset against Georgia. If they can, then they're definitely getting in as a 2-loss team.
two schools that are not in the playoff picture as of now, but you have covered extensively. We first met you covering those Miami Hurricanes down here in South Florida. It was a very different regime and very different amount of money spent, but it felt like very similar results to what you're seeing the Canes do this year. You covered Mario Cristobal at Oregon. And when he left Oregon, it's funny, the Canes were excited to have him. It felt like the Canes could not achieve, but I heard a lot of Oregon fans sort of go, oh, good. It was like they weren't upset, Cristobal. They liked what he did. They liked the discipline. They liked the recruiting, but they had major questions about his coaching. You were there when Cristobal was there. You covered Oregon when Cristobal was there. There always has seemed to be some questions when it comes to his offensive style and the offensive system he runs, and we're sort of seeing him do that down here in South Florida. What are your thoughts on Mario Cristobal as a coach overall?
It's going to be conservative at times. I feel like he didn't necessarily see the talent that they had at Oregon. I think that's kind of what frustrated a lot of fans. They feel like they should have been a lot better than what they were, and I think you're kind of seeing that with Oregon now, just because Dan Lanning came in there in 1 year. I know they lost the game against Washington, but you're talking about a team that still has a chance not only to win the Pac-12, but also win 11, 12 games potentially. So yeah, I think that just the way he used the talent, the depth chart there, he kind of stuck with old school running the football as opposed to throwing the ball a little bit more down the field, as you're seeing with Oregon now, with Kenny Dillingham being the offensive coordinator, who obviously you're familiar with when he was with Florida State. Well. So yeah, they're definitely they're doing a lot more modern day college football stuff as opposed to Mario Cristobal, who's more of an old school guy. That they do have a spread, but it's just more or less like more running, type of offense there. And for Miami, it's going to take time. Like I said, I'm not totally blaming him for this year, just because you have to get your recruits and get a few recruiting classes in there. But I think a lot of people had high expectations about the Canes this upcoming year. Thought they would compete for the Coastal and actually win it, and they're just completely embarrassed. Especially at home to your big rival Florida State. That stings a little bit too, and it shows you how far this program still needs to come. But a great recruiter. Coaching, philosophy still, big question with Cristobal there, and it's going to continue to be the case too. And I'm curious to see how they play against, Clemson on the road this upcoming week.
I'm all about. I didn't get mixing in old school. I don't. Everyone wants to run away from the run game. There's nothing wrong with running the ball. We've seen plenty of teams have success running the ball, but that's my issue with Cristobal. Is it feels like where even Nick Saban brought in a Kiffin and opened things up. Cristobal, no matter where he is, it feels like he's doing the same thing. And it's almost like he's going to fit a square peg into a round hole no matter what. And that's my big question. When he got here, I'm like, look, he's going to recruit. They'll be better. But you guys are talking titles. He had the talent there. And every year he found a way to lose 2 or 3 games he should not have lost. And that is a little peculiar to me and a little curious. Do you think that style can win? Because we're looking around college football. The NFL has already taken a lot of that. But college football, it's hard to find someone that just runs it 3 yards in a cloud of dust. Like I'm trying to think of anyone that like the running games that are there, even a Navy is different. It's not the stuff that it feels like he's trying to do in Miami that hasn't worked in a decade.
Yeah, I mean, you look at a team like Ole Miss. I mean, they have outside of the service academies, they lead the nation in rushing. Yeah, exactly. But they do that because their passing game is not necessarily the best. But yeah, I mean, you're going to have to open it up, especially when you play teams like a Florida State, like a Clemson coming up, like North Carolina, teams of that nature, like who can score. And if you're running the ball, at some amount of times, more often than not, you're not going to win, especially later on in the season. You have to be able to open it up and have to have a quarterback you feel like you can open it up and throw the ball down the field. And I think that was the big thing in Oregon too. And then we had Anthony Brown there, and a lot of people had questions about Anthony Brown's tenure there at Oregon, but the fact remains that I feel like they probably could have opened the ball up a little bit more. And it was crazy after Cristobal left to go to Miami, in the bowl game. They actually kind of did that, and Anthony Brown, was pretty. They still lost the game against Oklahoma, but they were pretty successful throwing the ball down the field. Which again, people were very frustrated in Oregon that they didn't see that more during Cristobal's tenure. But yeah, you got to. It's just the modern day college football. It's football in general nowadays. You got to be able to throw the football. I mean, it's cool to run the ball, and you need to do that too. But when the crunch time, you're gonna have to make plays. You got to have a quarterback that make plays there. And I'm curious to see, especially moving forward and going into next year, who his quarterback might be. And able to do that, because they're definitely going to have to do that if they're going to be any success, especially with North Carolina, because they're not going anywhere. They got a quarterback, May, who's one of the best in the nation. So you're going to have to deal with that at least for one more year.
Yeah, he's a redshirt freshman, I think. So he's going to be there at least another year. A place you were at, I don't know if it was much more than a year, but it was recent enough where you covered the beginning of the Mike Norvell era. Florida State, it's funny now, they're seen as one of those examples of a turnaround. And it was about 4 weeks ago that all of us Noles were jumping from buildings because they had lost 3 games in a row to 3 teams that at the time were really good. You were part of the early maturation of this group. And Mike Norvell, it's funny, the one thing I'll say for Mike Norvell is his message hasn't changed from day one to now. Before the success to what seems like some success, he said the same things. He's always, even whether they're winning or they're losing, his focus is insane. Like, he has the same focus no matter what is going on in the game, which I give him a lot of credit for. You were there in person around this regime, and they pretty much kept the whole staff intact except for a few hires here and there. What have you seen from the Florida State Seminoles from when you first got there to what you're seeing now?
Yeah, the 2020 season was just really weird. Obviously, COVID, everything was weird back then. You talked about teams that like the message doesn't change, or the players respond to a message, whether they're winning or losing. I think it was like that with Florida State. They had a rough first year under Mike Norvell. Players still positive. They wanted to run through a wall for them. They just didn't have necessarily the talent in order to win. And I think the last couple of years, Norvell has gotten better and better talent. And, first, like, I think we talked about Jermaine Johnson last year, and obviously, what he was able to do, become a first-round pick. But, man, like, Verse has been, absolutely kind of the same mode. And I think he's going to be, a number 1 first-round pick, too, as well. So, yeah, I mean, be able to have another playmaker, pass rusher like him, I think leading the way too. And Jordan Travis, I mean, he just to see where he's come from, like during that 2020 season where he was really inconsistent. You always saw the talent there, but now, I mean, when he's on, he's one of the better quarterbacks in the ACC. And I definitely think, especially these last 3 games for Florida State, beating Georgia Tech. I know Georgia Tech's down, stomping Miami and beating the Syracuse team to start 6-0. I know they're down too, but you're taking care of business. You're doing exactly what you need to be doing, and I expect them to do the same thing as Louisiana Saturday, and then you got a big game on Black Friday against Florida, which I think is also going to be a major statement there. If they can get to 9 wins, I think they get to 10. With the bowl game, that's going to be. I think you're starting to build that momentum. And we saw Clemson ain't the same team that they used to be. I mean, there's still some kinks in the army there, and I think Mike Norvell has an opportunity to build some momentum towards next year to say, you know what, we could be the team to beat next year and be in the ACC championship as well.
Well, yeah, when you look at Clemson, people are so quick to end the eras. Look, for Alabama, I'm not going there yet, right? Like, this is a tough year. But Saban motivates and turns with the tide as much as anyone. That's what makes him great, is that he doesn't just stay with his way. He goes with whatever is working, and he's as competitive as anyone. So he's going to take this and roll. You look at Clemson, I can't say the same thing. To me, it feels like a lot of the reason they had their success was they were able to keep that staff together. When you look at Saban, every year he's changing out staff. You look at Lincoln Wright, all these coaches every year, Ryan Day had changed out staff. He was very lucky for whether they were paying them well, whatever it was, he was able to keep Scott, keep Tony Elliott, keep Venables. Well, once you saw those guys go, it feels like they are a different program. What are are we seeing them fall? Because, again, a lot of us in the ACC would love to see it. But, again, they still feels like they'll win their 10, 11, 12 games. So for even falling, they're not in the playoffs, fine. But they're not a disaster either. Do you think it's the end of the Clemson great era?
I don't know if they're going to be as dominant as what they used to be. Well, I think here's the thing with Clemson for me. I think they're stale, at least offensively, and I think defensively they're still good. I mean, I think they're still recruiting at a high level, but offensively, I just don't see the skill position players that I used to see. I mean, I think I think you're seeing like when I would think about Clemson, especially when they were good. It wasn't just about Deshaun Watson. It was about Travis Etienne. It was about the receivers that they had and like everything was stacked. Like they were on the level of Alabama with skill position players, and also they had depth. Like they had depth. Like they lost the guy. Okay, fine. They had another guy that was just as good, if not better, behind them. This team, I mean, yeah, they got they have guys like Shipley, who I think is
he was a
good player, but they don't. It's not game changing players. They got good players. They don't have great players. And then also, we talked about DJ and the quarterback position there. I think he's decent, but I feel like they're in the. I remember Deshaun Watson. They ended up starting him as a true freshman, and it took a little while for it to happen. I think with Kay Klubnik, I think they need to make him the guy. Obviously they're not going to go to the playoff, and I don't think they're going to do that this year. I mean, unless something crazy happens, but Kay needs to be the guy moving forward. That way, even if you don't make the playoffs, then he gets more experience, especially going into next year, and he is your fresh ass quarterback of the future. But yeah, I just think the talent level has just dropped off immensely, which I think is obviously, you're going to have other teams that like a Florida State or like North Carolina who are going to be able to take advantage of that, in upcoming not only this year but also in upcoming years.
All right, before we let you go, Mr. ANtwan Staley, you are a writer on the Jets. We need to talk about the Jets. What do you have coming up with the Jets, with the New York Daily News? What are you working on now?
Well, I mean, basically, just talking about, Patriots week 2. I mean, they've lost 13 games in a row to New England. They played them 3 weeks ago, and, players are talking about how, they really wanted to win this, but, it's definitely a game that they must win. The Jets can end up being in first place after this weekend, or if they lose, they can end up being in last place.
Oh, geez.
So it's kind of crazy, how this division stacks up. But yeah, that just check me out at ANtwan Staley on Twitter, and also might work at the New York Daily News to kind of, check all that stuff out this week.
Antwan's great on Twitter. He covers the world. He's not just this guy that's live tweeting games. That's why I love ANtwan on Twitter. So he's fun. You should definitely follow him on Twitter at ANtwan Staley. ANtwan, appreciate you joining me once again, and look forward to talking to you again soon, my friend.
Sounds good.
Be good. This is the Defo Show. No Defo, just Lubie here on South Florida Live. Appreciate everyone who joined me this morning. Appreciate everyone who has found us over our time here. Coming up at 12 o'clock, our other program here on South Florida Live. Yes, we're working on new things. I'm trying to build this thing from the ground up and get you lots of different content to cover what is South Florida, not just sports, not just food, but everything. Believe me, as we all know, South Florida is an interesting place. Our other show is Mike Mayo's Lunchbox, which will happen today at 12 p.m. Again, no Defo, just Mayo and myself. Appreciate you all finding that as well. We have a really good time on that show. Mayo and I and Defo, and I've learned a lot about food on that show, and because that's the thing is, I live in South Florida, right, born and raised, and my taste, as anyone who's followed our shows learned, has grown through the years. I mean, I was one of those people who was not very adventurous as an eater, and as I've gotten older, I've been a little bit more adventurous, and the professor has been a big part of that. And then I met my wife, who is a very adventurous eater, so that's opened up my taste. Well, doing this stuff with Mike Mayo has really been big for me to see what we have locally, because we are in South Florida, and I know we had some good stuff down here. I didn't realize that we were comparable to a New Orleans or New York or an LA or Chicago. We have everything they have and more. We go from the Palm Beaches to Miami, even into the Keys. So, but focusing on Broward, which we've done a lot with Mayo, has been really cool. Seeing a lot of the stuff that's out there each and every day. We talk about different restaurants. So if you want to check that out, that'll be at 12 p.m. today. No Defo, just Mike Mayo and myself. I do appreciate everyone who's found us, everyone who watched today. I will be back tomorrow. I promise you, Defo will be back Friday. We'll have a Kicking It Old School with Tony Segreto. And we'll probably have Defo. I'll do my best to have Defo himself on so that you can at least get a touch of Defo. And I have heard from him, so he hasn't gone totally broke. So that's a win. We'll see if he keeps winning. We appreciate you all for joining us. Thank you to Dave Hyde, and congrats on the book. Good luck. Swagger out today. ANtwan Staley writes for the New York Daily News, but again, he's really cool on Twitter, and it's not just Jets. He does a lot of Dolphins because he covered the Dolphins, and again, he covered the Canes and the Noles, so he does a lot of college football. His Twitter is really cool because even though he is a beat writer and he does his beat writer job, he covers and talks about a lot of things. So at ANtwan Staley on Twitter, and check us out. You can check us out on the 5 Reasons Sports Network, and you can check us out on the Believe Network. We had a really cool conversation with Larry Zonka yesterday. Yes, that Zonk. Talking 72 Dolphins, talking about Zonk and his Syracuse days. Check that out. The Believe Network, BLEAV.com. Search After Hours, and check me out tomorrow morning right here. The Defo Show. No Defo, just Lubie on South Florida Live.
Let's go to eat a damn snack.
Look what they done to my show.